I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Relief organizations are working hard to help a city in ruins after the devastating earthquake in New Zealand. Plus, what's next in an effort in Congress to defund Planned Parenthood? And an effort to save pro-life pregnancy centers here in New York.
And Bill 371 is tight-fisted, narrow-minded, ugly, cruel, hateful people.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. The city of Christchurch in New Zealand continues to pick up the pieces days after a 6.3 magnitude earthquake devastated the city. The hope of finding survivors is fading fast. More than 100 people are dead, more than 200 others believed missing. Reports say 22 people are buried beneath the rubble of the historic Anglican Christchurch Cathedral. The quake also seriously damaged the Catholic Cathedral of the Blessed Sacrament. Amid the rubble, groups like Catholic relief organization Caritas International are reaching out and lending a helping hand in a traumatized nation. Yesterday, I had a chance to speak by phone with the director of Caritas in New Zealand, Michael Smith. Michael Smith, thanks so much for joining us here on Currents. We really appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you today.
First of all, tell me a little bit now. I know you're not actually in Christchurch right now, but tell me a little bit about what you're hearing and even seeing from your vantage point as far as the damage and kind of how people are holding up after this earthquake.
Well, look, it's been a very sad few days for the people of Christchurch. I'm actually talking to you from Wellington, the capital of New Zealand. But in Christchurch, the earthquake which struck 2 days ago has left at least 75 people confirmed dead. There's 300 people still missing. A lot of damage to buildings and houses. And so, yeah, people are really struggling to come to terms with the loss of life and the loss of their homes and businesses. It's a pretty tough time for them.
It's been a tough few months as well, I understand. This isn't the first time that an earthquake has struck, even in just recent history. Tell me a little bit about how this earthquake compares to the other one, I believe, which happened in September.
Well, that's right. I mean, the one in September was actually a larger earthquake in terms of magnitude. I think it was a 7.1, but it was deeper in terms of, I think it was 33 kilometres below the surface, whereas this one was only a 6.3 in magnitude, but it was 5 kilometres below the surface. So it just shows you that the size of the earthquake is one thing, but how shallow or how deep it is just as important. And so it's caused a lot more damage this time. There was no loss of life back in September, which was quite a miracle, but it happened during the night, which perhaps was one of the factors that people were not in the business district where there's been a lot of damage this time. So the poor people of Christchurch have been hit twice now within 6 months. Many people were just getting their lives back together, getting their houses repaired, and now they've been damaged again, and a lot more people have been affected this time than the first one.
Well, of course, it is a very tough time. What is Caritas doing as far as a response now? I understand it's not really the normal response for Caritas to go in there and kind of respond directly to disasters like this, but you are this time.
Well, we are this time. I mean, Caritas may not be a name familiar to your viewers, but we're the equivalent of Catholic relief services in the United States, and so our focus is normally working overseas, along with the other Caritas agencies around the world. So, but it's an exceptional situation there here now that a large-scale earthquake requires us to respond. So we're working with other Catholic agencies that have infrastructure in place locally in Christchurch. So we've got an organisation called St Vincent de Paul, which I presume is also in the United States, which provides emergency relief and emergency food on an ongoing basis. So we're working with them, plus other agencies like Catholic Social Services, which will be providing trauma counselling and meeting meeting people's needs that way. Plus, we'll work with other non-church agencies that are responding as well. So the Catholic community here, I'm sure, will respond very generously to our appeal.
Well, speaking of that...
Actually, I should say one other thing, that Catholic Relief Services, I just got an email overnight. They're donating $20,000 US to our appeal as well, which is just fantastic. Oh,
well, very, very good. Of course, it is a very tough time there. And speaking of kind of the road ahead, where do things go from here? I mean, obviously, there's picking up the pieces for the people of Christchurch and in other areas there, but where do things go from here? How do you pick up the pieces and move on from something that's been so devastating?
Well, it's very tough. I mean, you know, there's the physical side of things. You know, the people have lost their homes, they've lost, they've lost their workplaces, but they've lost loved ones as well. You know, that's the tragic thing. You know, people have lost family in this earthquake, and there are still, 200, 300 people still unaccounted for. So that people are not sure whether they just haven't been found yet, or whether they're crushed in the rubble somewhere. So it's pretty tough, but it will be a long-term recovery process, and that's where Caritas will probably be most useful. Luckily, New Zealand has a pretty good government-backed emergency system, so it's coping with the most immediate needs that way. But there'll be the longer-term needs for people that don't have enough food and financial support to get through the next few months. So we'll be helping out that way, and the trauma as well. I mean, there'll be lots of people that just will be traumatized, because one of the big problems at the moment is that there are continuous aftershocks. I think there were 17 aftershocks since midnight last night. So the aftershocks, you never know whether the next one's going to be a big one or not. So there's a lot of trauma for people to be dealt with.
Sure. Now, if our viewers would like to donate and to help out, how can they go about doing that?
Well, look, the best way they can do that is to go to our Caritas website, and they can donate with a credit card to our secure donation, and they'll find lots of information there about what's happening and the ways to donate.
All right, and we'll link up to that, your website, over on our website as well, and send our viewers that way also. Well, thank you so much, Michael Smith, for taking some time out to join us today with Caritas in New Zealand. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we do have more information about how you can help out over on our blog. Just go to currentsny.net and click on the blog, which is called Riding the Wave. Stay tuned. There's more Currents ahead. When we come back, bishops denounce the Obama administration's decision to stop defending the Defense of Marriage Act. We'll have that story plus the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, efforts to federally defund Planned Parenthood and save pro-life pregnancy centers here in New York. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, the U.S. Bishops' Conference is strongly criticizing the decision by the Obama administration to no longer defend the Defense of Marriage Act, also known as DOMA. The U.S. Bishops' General Council issued a statement saying that with the decision, the Obama administration is abdicating its constitutional obligation. According to the act, the federal government defines marriage as the union between one man and one woman. It also says states do not have to recognize a same-sex marriage performed in another state. Well, meanwhile, Maryland's state Senate is expected to vote on a bill to legalize same-sex marriage in that state. Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley says he will sign the bill if it passes. That would make Maryland the 5th state, along with Washington, D.C., to allow same-sex marriage. Maryland's Catholic Conference has been urging voters to contact their state senators and voice their opposition to the bill. Hawaii's governor, meanwhile, signed a bill on Wednesday legalizing same-sex civil unions in that state. Governor Neil Abercrombie said it was something that he truly treasured and honored with his signature. The law will not go into effect until New Year's Day 2012. Hawaii's Catholic Conference, in a statement, said the issue should have been open to public debate and decided through a constitutional amendment. Well, turning now to Wisconsin, where Democrats in the state's assembly have agreed to allow a vote on a bill that would curb the rights of unions. The proposal would cut union workers' benefits and their collective bargaining ability. Meanwhile, state troopers went to the homes of Senate Democrats who've been on the run for the past 8 days. They've left town in an effort to avoid bringing the measure to a vote in the state Senate. They've left the state, as a matter of fact. Wisconsin's bishops have weighed in the meantime. In a statement, Milwaukee Archbishop Jerome Listecki called on all parties to move beyond divisive words and actions and work together. Lawmakers in Arizona looking to tighten their state's immigration laws. Under new proposals, undocumented immigrants would be barred from driving in the state, enrolling in school, or receiving most public benefits. In a letter to state legislators, Arizona's bishops expressed their concern with the new legislation, saying that the human dignity of all must be respected. Just last year, Arizona passed another controversial immigration measure requiring police officers to question the immigration status of anyone they stopped and suspected of being in the country illegally. Well, closer to home here, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says his religion is a private matter. That after a Vatican consultant wrote that the governor should not receive communion. Canon lawyer Edward Peters, a consultant to the Vatican's highest court, wrote that Cuomo, who is Catholic, should not receive communion because he lives with his girlfriend, Food Network host Sandra Lee. Now, Cuomo also supports abortion rights and same-sex marriage, both of which the church opposes. And turning now to the Vatican, the Pope talked about the troubles in the Middle East with the president of Lebanon. Rome Reports has details.
Michael Sleiman, the president of Lebanon, visited Pope Benedict XVI at the Vatican for the second time. He is the only Christian president in the region. They exchanged views on the riots that have been sweeping through the Middle East and asked for an urgent resolution to the conflicts. Speaking in French, they also discussed the struggles for Christians in the Middle East. The two spoke privately for about 30 minutes. According to the Vatican, they have highlighted the importance of collaboration and dialogue between Christians and Muslims, and stressed that the presence of Christians and Muslims in Lebanon is a message of freedom and respectful coexistence throughout the Middle East. The official statement underlines the importance of civil and religious authorities to educate the consciences for peace and reconciliation. Sleiman was accompanied by his wife. He gave the Pope a 16th century gold and ivory incense burner, which came from a Maronite monastery.
Stay tuned, there's much more Currents coming up. Just ahead, the House passed a measure to defund Planned Parenthood. We'll look at what the future may hold for the legislation. Welcome back. Well, the budget slashing continues on Capitol Hill as lawmakers in Washington try to determine the best way to make a dent in the national debt. Among the things on the chopping block, federal funding for Planned Parenthood. Last week, the House passed the Pence Amendment, which would eliminate all taxpayer dollars from going toward the organization. Now, critics of this move call it an attack on women's health and say that Planned Parenthood provides health care services, including STD testing and cancer screening, to millions of women who otherwise could not afford it. So what do the bill's pro-life supporters say? I found out earlier today when I spoke with former Congresswoman and current project director for the Susan B. Anthony list, Marilyn Musgrave. Marilyn Musgrave, thank you so much for joining us here today on Currents. We really appreciate your time.
You're most welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, of course, the House of Representatives voting last week to take away federal funding from Planned Parenthood. Want to get your reaction initially to where things stand right now.
Well, first of all, I might preface that with during my entire legislative career in the House and the Senate in Colorado and then in Congress, it was my hope that we could defund Planned Parenthood. We weren't able to do that, and in this Congress, with the incredible disgust with more spending, plus the social and moral conservatives coming together, and some committed leadership in the House, it looks as though, the House feels very strongly about it. Now what happens when it gets to the Senate, of course, will be the issue.
Right, yeah, and of course, we've got a democratically controlled Senate, you've got a Democratic president in there who is pro-choice. Where do you see things going from here? I mean, is it just a roadblock, or is there any way, in your view, to maybe get this thing through?
Well, the Senate rules are quite a bit different than those of us, those in the House, and you can get a courageous senator, and he can manipulate the rules to such that he can get votes on things. And there are a lot of them over there that enjoy doing that. So I think there will be more votes coming out of the Senate than most people would anticipate. I think we'll have some champions rise up that will go ahead and promote the pro-life stuff. And so we'll see.
All right. Well, and then, of course, even if that does happen, what do you think are the chances that President Obama would sign anything defunding Planned Parenthood into law?
Well, I think it would be very unlikely that he would, because he's beholden, really, to the pro-choice crowd. And I don't think he would sign it into law. But there are many things that are done in politics just to keep the issue before people. And I think that's what's happening here. I think that blowing the doors off the House, getting it out of the House, and let it go to the Senate, and then they can take a look. And in the meantime, hopefully they can be troubled by live actions videos, seeing what can go on in these clinics, and make them wonder about their reelect. So there are several reasons to keep pushing on.
Well, speaking of those videos, those live-action undercover videos, there's been sort of a lot of hoopla about those tactics that live action has used, going in undercover and and all of that, and sort of maybe, I don't know if manipulating is the right word, but you know kind of the point that I'm getting at here. There's been criticism and hoopla of the tactics, as well as, of course, of Planned Parenthood for their response here, the perceived response from those videos. What do you say to the criticism of live action? What's kind of been your reaction, your take on all of that?
Well, as I watched them, I mean, the people doing the sting operation looked just like someone that would come in and ask for assistance, and the assistance was all too readily given to them. Well, some of the girls are 14 or 15, and don't worry about the age thing. Just don't fill that in, and then, it won't require mandatory reporting. Way to manipulate things so you can get a taxpayer discount. To me, I'm thinking, if these were real girls in here being trafficked, who is the person in this facility that's looking out for them? Nobody. Just throw them some condoms, make sure they can get their abortion. It's very upsetting to watch it. Very upsetting. And that was the clinic manager on that particular video.
Well, one last question here before we have to wrap things up, Ms. Musgrave. Looking at online the annual report, the latest available annual report from Planned Parenthood, it says in their reporting that abortion services are only about 3% of the services that they provide as far as health services, is how they classify it there for their reporting needs. They have STD testing, which takes up about 31%, so a lot more there. Contraception takes up a lot more. Cancer screening and prevention. As far as like the STD testing, the cancer screening and prevention and other things like that, is there a concern that taking away this federal funding might also mean an end to those services, which aren't nearly as controversial?
Well, I think Planned Parenthood could very easily split into two parts. And it could have a part that provided these women's services, and then another one that provided abortion. And, then they could be truly separated. And also, they could raise funds privately for the abortion part. That would be a suggestion I have. I think that many things will happen to Planned Parenthood in regard to this last tarnishing of their image, because you start getting a lot of people thinking about how that an organization like that might be aiding and abetting sex trafficking. Even people that are pro-choice. It is very troubling.
All right, well, Marilyn Musgrave with the Susan B. Anthony list. We thank you so much for taking some time out to join us today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Well, stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. When we return, we'll take you to a rally in New York to save pro-life pregnancy centers.
Tonight we have people from the community, we have people from out of the community. This is going to be a really exciting night.
And finally tonight, while Planned Parenthood continues to struggle to stay alive in the halls of Congress, pro-life pregnancy centers here in New York City are also fighting for their very existence as they continue to spread the word about a city council bill that would change the way they do business. Known as Bill 371, it would, among other things, require centers to put up signs indicating they do not make referrals to abortions or provide artificial contraception. Supporters of the bill say they just want truth in advertising, while opponents say Bill 371 would impose harsh regulations and free speech restrictions. Well, for the second time in 2 months, pro-lifers held a rally to help save their centers, and our cameras were there earlier this month in the Bronx.
You know, you can walk down any street in Manhattan and you'll be mingling with people from all over the world because New York is generous. It opens up its arms. And what we have in Bill 371 is tight-fisted, narrow-minded, ugly, cruel, hateful people. I don't get how this comes out of the New York City Council.
Tonight we have people from the community, we have people from out of the community. This is going to be a really exciting night to be able to rally together, not just to complain about it, but to come up with a strategy that is going to be effective and we could bring about true change.
We are here tonight because we must come together and say no to Bill number 371. Amen. We must say no to the City Council and their supporters who are now simply become an extension of the deaf arm of Planned Parenthood, NARAL, and other abortion providers in this city. Pregnancy care centers step in to inform the mother of her true choices. Pregnancy care centers step in to provide wholesome information for the future of the baby and their mother for years to come.
Frankly, I'm worried. I'm very worried that if more Christians and Catholics don't stand up and speak out and have the courage to make the phone calls and to go make the visits to the city council members, we could be doomed and this bill might pass. Now it's the time.
The heart of my problem with the bill is that, again, it will take people's ability to make sound choices away. They are imposing some things for the alternative clinics that are not being imposed for the abortion clinics. So it needs to be fair.
You know, we hear people from Planned Parenthood, from NARAL, President Obama saying they want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Well, if they want abortion to be rare, why are they making it harder for women to choose life?
This bill is actually unconstitutional. It's been shown in Baltimore, at the federal level, at the state level in Virginia, that is unconstitutional. Why do we want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars that we don't have in the city defending a bill that is not going to make it through?
The government should not be regulating what the pregnancy resource centers are saying to women. And they're not lying to women. And what they say, they offer free pregnancy tests. They offer abortion alternatives. They offer options counseling. This is what they say they offer, and this is what they do. And so this bill is an attempt to criminalize the pro-life movement here in New York City.
If this bill is passed, my First Amendment rights are going to be squashed, and all the 23 pregnancy center sites across the city. And this is going to send a message that New York is no longer democratic, it's no longer constitutional, no longer for free speech.
But I say no. I say, New York, we welcome children into the city. We welcome life. And we in the church have to be at the forefront of this because we're ministers of the gospel.
The church needs to become the prophetic voice of the community. And so I'm calling upon the church to do that.
If you do not commit to going to see legislators, if you do not make the phone calls in the coming weeks, this rally is for naught. This room can change this legislation. You are the people. Do not think it's going to be somebody else coming from somewhere else. Don't think it's at another time. It's now or never.
Well, that is obviously an issue that will not be going anywhere anytime soon. We'll have, of course, more. And those on the pro-choice side of the divide are actually planning a Stand Up for Women's Health rally at Foley Square in Manhattan over the weekend. We will have our cameras there as well for more on this ongoing issue. Well, that is it for tonight's show. Be sure to join us tomorrow as we wade into the controversy over a pro-life billboard in Manhattan. Is it just riling folks up, or is it raising awareness? You won't want to miss our coverage of that. But remember, we're always online at currentsny.net. In the meantime, you can also find us and friend us on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter if you prefer that. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.